the interest of 20 who are here on this platform and another 8, 9 who have logged in on LinkedIn are listening to us, I think we get started. I have somebody logging in from my hometown, the dean of my, the B school at my district town, Mr. Birendra Singh is here, and of course, a whole lot of friends I see here. So a very good evening to each one of you. And of course, the three panelists, Dr. Khandelwal, Dr. Kilbus Rai, and the CHRO, the young CHRO in our midst, Mr. Ashish Singh. So those of you for whom this may be the first time of leadership series or the first session of the leadership series, I think we have had a little longish gap. I sincerely hope that going forward, at least in a couple of months, we would like to present one session, if not more, every couple of months. In the past, what we have done in these sessions is we had one guest with a very distinguished leadership journey, someone who has made his mark. The session was around exploring the leadership journey of the person, what went into making of that individual, and of course, what went into the kind of accomplishment the individual has had. In this session, there is a slight deviation. We are exploring the evolution or journey of a discipline, of a profession, if you like. And the profession is HR. And I see good number of people here, majority of them obviously are from HR. And even if you ignore some of the heritage in HR that we have in India, and we'll be talking in the Indian context for now, not that I have thoroughly read Arthashastra, but Chanakya devotes Arthashastra, Chanakya's treatise devotes a significant piece on some aspect of man management. But if we leave that aside, it's about 90 to 92 years, 90 to 95 years since the time HR has kind of been there in a formal sense in companies. Beginning with the Royal Commission's promulgation to, Tata's making their beginning way back in 1930-31. And in various forms, as you know, labor officer, labor welfare officer, personnel officer, HR officer, now chief people officer, through various names, it has been there. In the early days and up to initial many decades, whatever name they were called by, they spent most of their time in what we could call HR basics. Very important in their own way, payroll, benefits administration, compliance, extremely important, but somewhat limited in the scope in terms of how much these can impact businesses and organizations. As the time went by, we have seen that, there are individuals in HR function, leaders and also the rest, who are part of crafting the business strategy, for the organization. They are part of future-proofing the organization. Basis those discussions, they come back to the HR function and craft programs, practices, and processes that actually enable, synergize with business and, in many instances, catalyze the transformation. So that is the other end. One end is HR basics, and at the other end is a transformative business enabling role of HR. After all of these years, it's very difficult to find the hard data around this. But if I look at my own experience and observation, you find that very large number of people in the HR profession are still limited in their engagement with business and more transactional in the form of support services. There are some who are clearly at the other end of the spectrum, and we have three of them here as panelists, who have traversed this path and have proved that it is actually a strategic partner with the business. It can play a business enabling role. It can play a transformative role. So in this discussion, what our focus is, what is it that HR people have done? Those who have made the difference, who have gone to the other end of the spectrum and have more of a transformative kind of a role within the organization. What is it that these individuals and people who are in these functions did in terms of competence, commitment, passion to excel, etc.? What is it that the organizations did in terms of thinking at the management level, structure, systems, and practices that helped these HR professionals to move in the league that they are in now? A few of them, I call them islands of excellence. So at one end, you may have a sea of mediocrity. At the other end, you may have an island of excellence. So we are talking about what did they do and what did the organization do to enable them to get to this kind of a role of synergy and transformation support. And then the last part of this discussion will be, since we have three panelists, each one of them has a track record of having made an impact to business and people side of organization both. So therefore, the last part of this discussion will be to ask them from their experience, pick up any one instance that actually made a difference and HR actually got noticed as a function, as an opportunity that very clearly is at par with any function being represented in the business leadership team. So that's the that's the context of this discussion, and I believe it is of great interest to me, and I believe that it will be of interest to HR professionals. And let me now introduce very, very briefly the panelists. I must say that if I really want to do justice with their detailed introduction, it can fill the session. The two of them have a body of work and about a 50 years career behind them, Dr. Khandelwal and Dr. Akhil Busrai. Ashish, though a young CHRO, but the kind of work he has done, there is a lot to share about him as well. So therefore, I'll be rather brief in their introductions. Dr. Khandelwal, began his career in Bank of Baroda as an HR professional. Very soon, he got noticed for his convictions and potential to lead, and therefore, organization decided to move him around from the field to the head office. Then on his own making, he chose to take up some of the most challenging business responsibilities and led the business vertical, some of the largest business verticals of Bank of Baroda. And then seeing what he was able to do in that business vertical, the management realized that, yes, I think this is the kind of person we need. He was quickly brought back to the corporate office again. And of course, he kind of wore two hats all the time, if not officially. One is the business leader's hat, and another is an HR leader's hat. And during the 3 years when he was there as a chairman of Bank of Baroda, the bank remembers that phase as a golden phase of the bank in terms of the kinds of things that were done for people and the kind of performance, the business results that were achieved during that period. So, who better to reflect on this journey of HR people from HR basics to the transformative kind of, role than Dr. Khandelwal, who has been there, done that, and actually he combines both the roles into one. So Dr. Khandelwal, a very warm welcome, and thanks very much for supporting us. Next, I talk about briefly Dr. Akhil Busrai. Akhil, a good friend. He's a gold medalist of XLRI, and he had the benefit of working in some of the best known MNCs that were known for advanced and progressive HR practices, be it Hindustan Unilever, Motorola, Shell. I think his last corporate assignment was with IBM. So very deep experience in HR, because of the kind of companies that he worked in. And after his corporate stint, now if you look at him, you can bracket him as one of the distinguished academics because, his services as a faculty, as a teacher are sought at Berkeley, at IIM Ahmedabad. He's a fellow of Association of Indian Management Schools. He's a member of National Council of CII, SHRM, ISTD. He's already a PhD. He's pursuing one more PhD, second PhD, and also master's in anthropology. So continuous knowledge seeker. So Akhil, it's great to have you for the panel, and very warm welcome. Before I go to our youngest of the panelists, I must share something that I missed about Dr. Khandelwal, his role as an author. There are 2 books that he has written, Dare to Lead and CEO, a chess master or a gardener. And both have, basically reflecting on his own experience. Both have turned out to be the best sellers. And, some of the global gurus like Professor Ram Charan, Dev Ulrich, and many others have written raving reviews about the kind of, insights and approach to leadership that is there. And actually, one of the reviewers is also Dr. Akhil Basrai, who not only wrote the review for the book, but also for one of the journals. So that's author Dr. Khandelwal. Ashish, less in number of years, about 17, 18 years, but in terms of the kind of work he has packed, it is very, very significant. He is a IIT and XLRI graduate. He has also had stint at HUL and Adobe. And from there onwards, he has been in these new age startups. So Myntra, then, MedLife, what you know as PharmEasy now, and now Misho as a CHRO of these companies. Now, I have had an occasion to listen to him on 1 or 2 occasions, and I think he very naturally brings what I would call a business enabling approach to HR function. Rather than only looking at a functional excellence, is that process or practice is really helping managers and employees at large deliver more value besides being engaged and happy, is something that seems to come very naturally to him. And we are looking forward to, his perspective of how he sees and how he has traversed this journey, from HR basics to a transformative kind of role in HR. So that's.
I have a confession to make. I'm sorry. First of all, thank you for inviting me and having me here. The confession is that I was really looking forward to this, not because I wanted to talk, but really I wanted to listen to the other 2 gentlemen talk, because I have been following them for some time. And the moment you mentioned the names, I said, why not? So thank you so much for having me here.
Most certainly, and all of us are, and very warm welcome here, Ashish. Great to have you with a completely new perspective. So that in a nutshell is about 3 panelists. And with that, I straight away get to the first question that I have. And let me begin with Dr. Anil Khandelwal. And actually the same question in some form comes to all 3 of them. Dr. Khandelwal, when you would have joined Bank of Baroda as a young officer, you would have seen HR function. That would be good 50 years ago. And when you left Bank of Baroda, you would have seen HR function then. Only difference is you were donning both hats in some way or the other. So, give us in a nutshell, what do you think was done from people, capabilities, mindset, point of view? I'm sure you were at the helm and driving, but what are some of those things about people capabilities, HR people's capabilities and mindset that actually brought about the change that you saw in these 50 years? That's where I thought we'll begin.
Okay. So thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me, and with such a distinguished friend, Akhil, and other gentleman, Ashish. It's really an honor. And so I should tell you, first of all, a bit correction in my introduction. One,
Okay.
that I did not join as a HR officer. I joined as a probationary officer in the bank. That is one. I'll come little later. Second is that on my own willingness, I did not go to banking operation. In order to get rid of HR, they forced me, and despite my extreme reluctance, I landed in the banking operations. Second correction is this. And so I thought. So I joined, I actually, after my engineering, those were the days engineers were not getting jobs. So in 1970, and I just saw an advertisement, I came to bank probationary officer, and it was a hell, I tell you. It was hell in the sense that nothing seemed to happen. People used to come at 11, 12 o'clock. Customer used to come, write their own passbooks. Akhil is nodding because he has seen those days. And I was fed up. And as regard HR function, Bank of Baroda is the only bank. Even today, there is no formally HR qualified people in any bank, including State Bank of India. Because bankers strongly believe that they can manage HR function. Bank of Baroda was the only exception where we had started from a labor welfare officer, and we had one of the ace IR professional to whom I gave credit to induct me in that. And so Bank of Baroda till today has a professionalization. In between, there is a love-hate relationship. So sometime an operational head comes and HR head, sometime the same. So, you know, the HR function has, frankly, in the banking industry, is still crying for recognition, so to say, at least in public sector banks. So that is the story. Some of us joined in 70, 71, survived, and that's how the life began. So it was mostly IR. So after 2 years of frustrating probation in banking operations, I applied bank, advertised for personnel officers, and I applied. That's how my journey in personnel began. And let me also share with you the major part of my career, 11 years. I had left the bank 4 years, then came back as senior core faculty to teach HR in bank's staff college. So 11 years as a trainer. Then I come to HR function, and one fine morning, I go to operations. Now, that's a little bit about myself. It has been a very checkered career for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, looks like he logged off. He got disconnected. These are the problems of virtual conversations. I hope he's able to log in, or maybe Akhil, what do you suggest?
He will log in. I think he'll log in immediately.
Yeah, sure. Let him
we'll
complete.
We'll lose the continuity. In the meantime, let me grill Ashish. If he thinks that we are here to tell him something, he'll be very surprised when we start asking him to learn from him.
It's both ways. Sure.
Ashish, which batch are you from, Excel?
So I was 2003 to 5. 2005 I had cleared. Yeah, and
I was there last week for the homecoming.
Oh, you were there? Okay, wow, nice.
In fact, our batch was celebrating 50 years, so we stayed 2 days extra to do our own celebration. Then we joined the homecoming. Good fun.
Oh, nice. Okay, and the new campus, I'm assuming you might not have gone.
That is no more new. It is now 6 years old. the International Center and the MDP, etc. So we stayed there only.
Okay. No, I didn't get a chance to go back, except very early few years for campus hiring. But
okay, laptop is giving trouble. You can join from mobile then. I see. You. WhatsApp? Okay, right away. Okay.
I can see Manisha Yadav on the call, but she's not on the video.
Yeah, they can now.
Hi, Manisha. Can you hear me?
Yes, she is there. They can now. Okay, they can unmute themselves. They can also start the video. Anyone? If she is there, she could. Yeah, Dr. Khandelwal is logging in. Yes, Dr. Khandelwal, we can see you, but you are muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So I'm very sorry for this interruption, but I couldn't help it.
No
problem. So the issue is that I'm very happy that from its journey from IR, administration and HR, now it's moving to really the business side of it, and many of the professionals are moving towards the CEO role. So I at this stage, I will speak only this much, that the journey of HR has been turbulent, at least in the banking industry. And even today, there is no professionalization of HR function. And it's mostly administrative work. Bank of Baroda has been a bit exception because one of my predecessors introduced HRD, and the bank always had a very progressive management. And then some of us moved to senior positions. That's how even today we can say that in some form HRD exists there. So it is not one of those multinational organizations where it has gone into the arteries and veins of organizations like HUL or IBM. So we have that problem. This context is very, very important. And this is an industry where there are 1 million people work, I tell you. And it is still, it is worth noting, there are still organizations in our country where HRD is still, HRD or HR is still crying for formal recognition as a full-fledged silo as a vertical, full-fledged professional vertical. So that's where I would like to stop and hear others. Yeah.
Okay, so I will come back to this. There's a little part of it, but I'll come back to this. So, Akhil, over to you. When you entered HR, even in MNCs, I'm sure it was at a certain stage. And by the time you completed your corporate tenure at IBM, and then now you have been as a consultant advisor, looking at that, if you can talk about people who have moved forward in a more strategic role and significant value addition to business, what is the difference you have found? What are some of the things they bring to the table because of which business accepts them in a equal role and a business enabling role?
Thank you, Pramod, for having us over. And I would look at it this way, that the HR function has evolved, like what Dr. Khandelwal very rightly mentioned, from welfare to industrial relations to HR business partner to working with the business, etc. But there's a common thread in all this, is that the many HR functions remain the way they were during the whole life tenure. HR function did not change. And if you look at whether it is MNC or whether it's Indian Business House, and Sanjeev, this is to answer your question also, the HR function by itself remained almost static in terms of his expectation of his own role and delivery. what made the difference was individuals who came to be associated with HR either as a CHRO or even as team members. And if some of them were bold enough, some of them were maverick enough to bring a change, they were not disappointed.
Mhm.
So to say that the whole HR function has evolved would be an overkill. It is not. It has still remained the same. And it's not fair to give credit only to advanced, so-called advanced MNCs, etc. Some of the best Indian houses, and we have people like Vishnu Banaji here who work with Tatas, who work with Godrej. We have people like Santru who are leading Aditya Birla Group. And these are companies for very many MNCs to role model. So it's not the prerogative of big and famous and big name companies. It is what the act of the CHRO and the HR team that needs to be counted. And not the HR function by itself. Many HR functions have shown for a time being, again gone down in the limelight because the CHRO has moved out. And I'm not saying the CHRO should take credit. It is the functionaries. Not only CHROs. Sometimes you see a pocket like Wipro. The compensation person has made such a huge difference to the HR contribution to Wipro, individual. The point I'm making, Pramod, is that the function has not evolved, does not change. It is the input of people who lead the function, who are part of the function, who bring a change, and either contribute or remain on a maintenance mode. There's no incremental improvement I'm referring to. The chota mota improvement ho gaya, like that happens in every place. But if you see sharp curve improvement, that has happened only by leadership in the HR team.
Sure. So it's a person at the helm that has made the difference. Very well said. And that is why even in, so-called not so progressive organizations, you see HR playing a cutting edge kind of a role and a very strategic role. And the so-called most progressive organizations, HR may still be doing HR basics.
It's not my brand name. I mean, Marico is something we look forward up to.
That's right. Yeah.
To me as an HR professional, that company represents a huge amount of input that HR should feel proud about, and we look up to them.
Yes, absolutely. I've had a privilege to listen to Mr. Harsh Mariwala himself speak about how he leveraged HR and integrated HR with business right from early days, and maybe subsequently we will talk some of that. Sure. So yes, it is a person function. What you're saying is it is still at various stages in various organizations, but wherever there are right people, yes, the difference is visible. Thanks very much for that, candid view. So now, Ashish, over to you. Your reflection on this journey of the function, while your own is 17, 18 years. Sorry, I keep repeating this, but you are a keen observer, and therefore your reflection on what makes a difference for HR leader, HR team to be taken differently in an organization.
Yeah, even in the short time, like you're saying, that I have seen, during that period itself, I have sort of also felt, as I look back, that the asks and the skills required from HR have also seen some bit of change. I'll for example talk about some of the context itself around us changing. For example, when I started off with some FMCG factories. These were Reckitt Benckiser factories in West Bengal, and ER, IR, unionized environments were very important, and I wanted to do that. That was critically important. But gradually later, the new sectors came in: tech, IT, startups, the knowledge sector economy, and so on. And I myself felt that for me, that part was important, but there is a host of other skills that are now also equally, if not more, important than, say, just labor law or being very strong with ER and so on, right? So functional knowledge, for me, the ask of that knowledge changed with just the change in the sector. A similar change I observed was also with regard to the talent landscape, for example. In the new sectors, I found that it is, in the knowledge economy particularly, people are the asset, and it's very tough to attract and retain talent there. Everybody wants to hire the same set of people. Tech, unlike brands, products, etc., people end up being the only asset that a company has. And also a new phenomenon, people jump jobs very quickly, right? So in my kind of environment in a startup, I've realized that time to scale a company, a startup, that window is very small. We have to scale very, very fast, or else the business opportunity is lost, right? If, let's say, we are late in hiring a team fast enough. And therefore, building that culture internally to retain, but also to brand outside. How do I brand my culture outside as a talent branding team, etc., becomes also important. Now, this is a marketing skill, in today's kind of an environment. Yeah. Similarly, the way tech has come into, insofar as HR delivery is concerned, right? All the HR tech products that we have, which enable better employee experience. For example, performance reviews, recognition by and large in companies happens now online, right? So the understanding of this tech UI and human interaction, right, that becomes also critically important. So basically, the point, as I look back, I'm seeing that there are either new sectors, new talent landscape, or utilization of tech in HR. They have also ensured that the ask from an HR guy has changed. And on a high level, obviously, the skills required still remain the same. I agree with what was said earlier by two sirs. The strategic thinking, structured problem solving, ability to influence, consult or communicate, etc., still continue to be important, but the context also is slightly changing. So that's the way I look at it.
So interesting. So asks have changed, and therefore those who are able to bring that skill set and mindset to the table, they kind of make the grade, and that's what makes the difference. Interesting from this particular sector's point of view. So the next question that I have is a related one, and again I'll begin with Dr. Khandelwal. While there's no denying that the person at the helm, the HR leader and his team, they are the ones who will earn their place by what they do or what they don't do. No questions about that. But we also know that, you have had HR people who did very well in a certain organization, but when they went to a certain other organization, their ability to deliver was somewhat limited. I don't want to name names, but one is familiar about such cases. So obviously, the way the management team, the organization is able to provide the platform, structure, processes, the thinking of the management, how best to leverage HR function, that is also an important aspect. What will determine whether how far you go in this journey of HR, from HR basics to more transformative role. So on that, I'm keen to hear the reflections of the panelists. What have you seen from organization side, which means the management team of the organization, the CEO and the CXOs, whoever has an influence on the running of an organization, the structures, the processes? Are there certain ways of engaging with HR, leveraging HR that help HR deliver more value to business? I'm keen to hear your reflections on this. And Dr. Khandelwal, when you went to the other side of the table as a leader of the business and the leader of the organization, obviously you were in that role where you could kind of support HR. Of course, you have all along carried both the functions, business function, HR together with you, but whoever was there in HR, how do you think the business leader, organizational leader can enable, support HR in this journey to move towards more transformative role?
Yeah, so I would say my experience of now so many decades is only one, that HR is as effective. You may bring a man from Harvard, XLRI, anywhere, as the CEO wants him to be or her to be. It is a CEO function.
Okay.
I've been a CEO, I've been an HR head, I have worked with CEOs who have no role for HR, number one. You may be the best in the industry. And I have worked with CEO whose vision is so clear that HR blossoms.
There you are.
HR flourishes. And there is what Uday Parikh calls role making for a HR person. From pure human resources to transformative role. This is all what CEO expects you to do. And therefore, if you want, I can say that my best time was when I became CEO, because I knew what to do, how to make my HR effective. And also, when I was zonal manager, where I was a zonal CEO. So irrespective of what happens in corporate office, I was in command. So either HR in command, which HR is not, it's a support function or at most an elevated function. So the man in command, a business head, a vertical head, a CEO, unless this person is committed, and therefore the HR training, HR exposure has to go to business leaders early in career, so that when they occupy central position, they make HR blossom. I think that is my one learning. So while Akhil says it's about the, yes, I agree. It is provided that this combination of HR, he also has a CEO of that kind. Now, second thing, I must be doing some critiquing of HR function.
Sure.
I think in my kind of organization, which is pure commercial organization, huge manpower, the rhetorics of human being does not work. The HR means that only HR knows that they are the messiahs and the drum beaters, that how important is a human being. I think it's gone a bit too far, because the HR, and this is where business synergy comes. The HR also needs to understand the world of line managers, the world of operating managers, the internal management processes, the business processes. And unless he or she has that wider frame of understanding the organization. And I think some of our people, at least in my industry, I'm not talking of other industry, the HR people, and therefore as a policy now, we divide. I think this has started with me, that I was sent to operations. I felt very bad at that time that I don't know banking operations at all, and it will be a great risk. But I think with whatever intention it was done, it was the challenge of HR role incumbent to prove himself that how do I apply all my learning tools and techniques for business turnaround. I think that is the moment for that every HR person should really either try to create that moment or try to, because that is where you are applying all your knowledge, tools and techniques. So therefore, it's very, very important that we develop contextual intelligence about the organization. And this contextual intelligence includes the business intelligence, process intelligence, management processes, because if you are, and at the end of the day, in the support function, we don't expect results. In support function are all result oriented, while when you go to business function, it is all about results. So therefore, if you have to describe the job description of a typical HR person in an organization, what is the result? What is result orientation? Result orientation. It remains a maintenance, it remains a support function, it remains a so in business you have to create the results, and with your tools, techniques, understanding, people orientation, if you are able to demonstrate business results, then you have arrived. The function has arrived. And I myself experienced that from the kind of almost hatred for HR function, after 2 successful tenures in business, people started believing in the vindication of the role for HR. I think the new respectability that the function got, yes, these guys can deliver. I think this is what HR, and therefore now I have become a strong advocate of HR people undertaking a business role and to actually demonstrate. And it is not a rocket science role, I can tell you. And so I'm very happy if some organizations are now putting HR guys. In fact, in Bank of Baroda, we already sent a couple of DGM and GMs to business. And I tell you, they have performed, if not better, equally well with the business people. That's my experience.
This is
and awesome. Anil, recently, GAIL announced their HR head to become the CMD, Joshi. Incidentally, Ashish Joshi is from Excel, also 86 batch. So what Anil you mentioned is true, that people are moving in the right direction.
Yes.
Very well. Very well. And actually, this is awesome, Dr. Khandelwal. So, just to summarize in a few things, of course, the CEO's vision and commitment and his own exposure, his or her own exposure, how to use HR is important for HR. But what Dr. Khandelwal has said very candidly is that you as an HR will gain credibility when you are able to use all that you know, your perspective, your tools, for business results. When you do that, you carry all the credibility that you need to carry. And I think Dr. Khandelwal is a living example when he says that after I had 2 successful business stints, when I came back to, people spoke about HR with a different kind of a language and a respect, that it's not only these guys who talk, they actually know how to produce results by what they talk. So this is awesome. And obviously, having been there, done that, you can speak about it with much greater clarity. So Ashish, over to you. Your take on this.
Sure. Yeah, actually, it was mesmerizing to just listen. It's exactly the same sentiment that I carry as well. For me, even in the startup, tech, new age sectors as well, I have found that with all the business leaders, I have always said that, hey, you will get the kind of HR that you asked for, exactly the HR that you asked for, because that HR is only as good or as bad as that leader there. And just sort of kind of reflecting some of the people who have really pushed me or my teams to do well, I think a few things really stood out. One was the leader himself or herself was very clear in understanding the potential of HR, how it can be leveraged, where it can be used very strongly, what are the benefits to the company when that happens.
Right.
Second, I think I do recall those leaders particularly calling out when HR was being, or I or we were being vague and verbose, and you know how HR presentations can. When we were being HR, they will call it out. They will say, you know what, you are now being HR. Okay. So can you come straight to what will you impact and how will you impact? And I saw he was talking about the result that HR can drive. I've seen those leaders clearly call out, I want this deliverable done, and in some way measurable, and that has worked for us. And finally, I think they have themselves, those leaders have pushed people in HR to sort of understand the business language, what's happening with the business, what's the challenges, join the meeting. Sometimes it's very easy for HR folks to say, hey, why am I needed? This is just wasting too much of my time. Right. And I've seen them push initially for them to be there, and that has led to a lot of sort of getting to understand and then pushing. So for me, those leaders have really worked out very well.
Wonderful. This comes as a one more reinforcement of what Dr. Khandelwal is saying. So those basics, Dr. Khandelwal, have not changed, whether it's a new age company or it is a public sector bank. So there is clearly a role for the CEO, and equally there is a role of how HR guy goes about it, if they really have to be counted as people on the table who can contribute like any other business leader. Very interesting. I've come to the last part of the questions now. But as we have these conversations,
Pramod, can I respond to the same question?
Sure, please go ahead. Yes, and I was just saying that participants, if you have questions, feel free to post here. We'll try and answer as much as we can. Yes, Akhil, over to you.
So I'll like what Anil mentioned, the contextual intelligence. I think that is a very crucial term, and not because it sounds very impressive, but it means a lot. He also repeatedly mentioned how much business connection HR should have. And then, of course, Ashish's take is that, we are not used, not nudged by the CEO. I have a different view completely, Pramod. I think we have far too long depended on being used, being nudged, being asked to by line managers. And that mentality of master-servant relationship has ended in many of our minds. If we don't take charge of our own function, then we are just surveillance to submissive to this type of expectation that my CEO should be good if my best has to come out. I don't subscribe to that theory. But to subscribe to any other theory, there must be a check whether we really connect with business, what Anil mentioned repeatedly. Do we understand business? And unfortunately, many of us in HR understand PAT, PBT, CAGR to the last decimal point. But what the business leader loses sleep over misses us. We also sometimes answer, who's our customer? And we say line manager, CEO. I look at it differently, and Pramod, and I have a strong view on this. HR has to understand business, not only to be an effective member of the management team, but to shape the business. And we must be cheeky enough to say we are capable of doing it. Anil has done it, proved it. And to do that, one has to not wait for CEO's prompt. Can you do this?
Yeah.
Can you participate in this? Can you join in this? Can you look into it? We must create our agenda, and it's possible. Let me give you one live example, if you permit. In one of the IT companies, we were hiring at the rate of about 1,500 people each month joining. And happily, every week we would have every Thursday we would have a review call. In the first week, something like 16 to 17, 18% of the target would have been met, not 25. Second week would be around 40, 42, 43%. Third week would be about 60, 62, 63%. Fourth week, 100%. How? Then the recruitment people would say, oh, the gestation period, the thinking period. I also headed a recruitment function. I give the same cock and bull story to my bosses. The point is that recruitment people are measured on numbers they sign. And the last week, when 60% became 100%, there must be shortcut. You have to work on hypothesis. So what we did, we had 737 clients globally. You name all the airlines, all the banks, all the Visa cards and MasterCard. So I went through a large chunk of customer satisfaction reports and reviews, not only score. And we found a couple of things happening, that some of them were not happy with even simple things like weekly report by the project team assigned to them. Some lacked basics. And we said, how can it be? Hiring in a big company, world's best IT company, how can the quality be that? So there, we started poking the business. We want to review all the people who have been hired in the last 18 to 24 months. We will give them a test. Basic English, basic IT, and all that they've been trained on in 24 months. Now, this was HR initiative. The line managers are up in arms, up in arms. How dare you think in that line? Some of these people are already on our project. Now is the question, does HR have gumption to do what is right for the company or what is right for the function? Right for the function would have been, if you tell me to do it, I'll do it, sir. Right for the company is that maybe we have all grouped up together, including you, line managers, and we will examine it. We'll expose ourselves, we'll examine this. So we made SLT agree, senior leadership team agree, that they will all go through test. 24 months higher. You can imagine the number, Pramod. To cut it short, 574 people were separated. Now, some of them were rated very good. This created it's like putting a cat amongst the pigeons. The line manager up in arms, but it's a compliment, left-handed compliment to HR, that we led what was good for the company. So it's possible. All you need is a bit of cheekiness, bit of nervousness, bit of butterflies in your tummy. Feel nervous about it, but have the courage and sometimes stupidity to go ahead and do it because it's good for the company. And when you end the whole process, and exactly what Anil mentioned, that you come out with a little bit of more respect than what you had entered. But you got to take charge. Don't wait for CEO to give you a menu. We are not going to UDP restaurant to order a hot idli.
This is beautiful.
Just a little.
All right. Yes.
Akhil has been very provocative. Perhaps accepting that without CEO, HR man has no role. That I don't think none of us intended that. What I'm saying is...
No, I understand. No, Anil, I didn't say that.
What we
but
said
why
that,
wait for CEO
No. None of us expect CEO to give a menu and we follow. We are clerks of works. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying to make significant contribution in the business, it is very important that the CEO is progressive and CEO really spends time with him. Now, that does not mean that whatever best can be done by HR man, he will be a mute spectator waiting for CEO's nod. I thought I'll clarify that because there will be a very poor picture of HR.
In fact, I have a lot of respect for the CEOs, and most of the CEOs are people-centric. What you're saying, I totally agree with you. It is a three-legged race which CEO and CHR has to play. They must work together. One cannot compete with each other.
Absolutely.
And I'm not, if I have implied that, I apologize. They have to have a very close partnership. They should be thick as thieves, literally, to plan out business and HR implementation. I totally agree with that.
Sure.
Okay, if I can, on the business side, if I can, one point I can add.
Please, go ahead, yes.
Akhil said a very good thing, that HR guys actually need to shape business. That's a good phrase used. Apart from that, how they will shape business, that is important. I think either he is directly doing business, but when it comes to shaping, it is actually understanding and removing the internal constraints, like the internal bureaucracy,
correct,
the communication pattern internally, responsiveness, the approach and attitude to customers. I think this is how a HR man or woman can shape the business.
correct.
When we come to shape the business, sometimes we understand, but yes, if he is actually on the driver's seat as a business head, then he is in control of everything. But even if he is not in control of things, as a shaper of business, he can do diagnostic surveys about communication pattern in the organization, diagnostic survey of how customers are experiencing organization, about internal bottlenecking and bureaucracy. I think he can shape the business in this manner by producing these kind of things and making discussions around these problems. The important thing is, sometimes HR projects such an optimistic picture because of their training that he needs to be. But hope is a good guide, but bad companion. We forget often that you can't run the organization on hope that human beings are greatest assets. Ask your line managers. They will say,
they are the sufferers. They are the sufferers. Yes.
So I think HR role is to be doing internal critiquing and keeping his philosophy in a bit of background. Unless it is so necessary to really show a different perspective and paradigm to line people. In my opinion, it appears to me that HR goes as sermonizers most of the time. And I think that is the real problem, where many CEOs also feel a bit overwhelmed by these kind of things. Anyway, I thought I just...
No, but Pramod, it's a very good point that this is the review HR must do of itself. There are a lot of things that can be improved in the organization without being agenda of the line manager.
Yeah.
HR can create that agenda.
Yes, yes.
And I'm not being theoretical. I'm being very practical, that HR can, it's like, when your house, your carpet has a fold, you will never trip on it. But the day I walk on the first time, I'll trip because I'm not used to that fold in the carpet.
Sure.
So I think HR has to find out those creases and folds in the carpet.
Absolutely. And I think this is a wonderful debate, really, two perspectives. And, if I may digress a little from my role, take an example of the kind that Akhil gave, that businesses in the last week will take anybody because they want to have that many bodies in the project. And HR can play a custodian of quality standards that as an organization we want to maintain. But if HR knows that what the project deliverables, business deliverables are, and the business head and HR are able to have a conversation, possibly they will arrive at a midpoint of what is acceptable given the deliverable and the schedule, and what is the adjustment possible, if at all, in terms of little tweaking that we need to do. So as a custodian of systems and quality, I think HR has a primary thing, because sometimes among operating managers, and many times all the way up to senior most levels, you see a tendency of cutting corners. But if HR becomes oblivious of the pressure under which the operating manager and even at senior levels they are working, then they will, what Dr. Khandelwal was saying, even CEOs can feel overwhelmed that these guys are not in the domain of reality. They are, in their own world. So the balance is possible. I think both have a role to play. But I think this debate has been very interesting. The last part of this question is, we have exchanged perspectives. Each one of them brought, very sharply articulated perspectives. Let's get a little specific in the time that we have available. In the next, let's say 2 to 3 minutes, if you can pick up any one piece of work, a program, a practice, a process, intervention, whatever you want to call it, that made a difference to how business saw HR and how they felt that, I think, Dr. Khandelwal in some way has, obliquely referred to it in his last answer. But if there is more to add in this, that made business people think that, no, these guys are not only talking, actually, let's listen to them. They have something more to offer than, what we business guys think. So any one specific piece that you would want to share? I again want to begin with Dr. Khandelwal.
I have, apart from many things we did, one thing that people always talk about is that when I came to board level role, even as number 2, and number 2 in our system can be a decorative piece, as well as, but most of the time, you are a second fiddle, let us face it. But I think this was the time, because I came from operations. I also did my Ph.D. on industrial relations in the bank. I knew one thing, that is the biggest problem in line managers are the union problems. The day-to-day problem, the indiscipline, the restrictive practices, the role played by the union getting into management domain, this was the main thing. So that is where I picked the threads. So I always believe that impressions apart, we must do diagnostic work. So I started personnel audit. And as a result of this audit, what came, I presented it to the board of directors, and of course, chairman was there. And they were all shocked that a huge recovery needed to be done from employees, because it was just a chaotic work environment. I don't want to elaborate. My book has everything. And we caught the bull by its horn and went on reform agenda for industrial relations. And this reform agenda had several strands. This is not the place, I should say, what we all did. But finally we did was that we clearly defined management domain and trade union domain and freed the branch manager from this daily humiliation and the branch manager was firmly placed as a manager. In earlier times, if we ask someone that today a savings bank clerk has not come, you sit on this counter, there would be agitation. Why me? But today, even after 15 years, the manager is in full control. He cannot say, I cannot produce business results because of IR problems. Last 15 years, there has been dramatic rise of business in Bank of Baroda. Today, after State Bank, it is the #1 bank. And on all parameters, it is the most respected bank. You do a survey and go to branch managers. They say, because today we have freedom to do business. The constraints have been removed. And I think that was my moment of, if you can say, the greatest professional satisfaction, that we could rid branch managers from day-to-day problem and really expanded his role to be a real business manager, that if there is anything now, he has to deal with, but there are no external constraints at all. That was my moment. And I think after that, the HR got such name in the banks, such change of perception in the bank, such glory in the bank, that even Government of India, and let me share with you, I was least qualified to be posted chairman of a bank because of my operational shortcomings, such a large bank. I've never handled credit function. I've never handled international banking. I've never handled treasury. You are virtually putting a HR guy to such a large bank because of the credentials of transformation. And this IR transformation was my best moment of my career.
Awesome.
That was a
awesome,
moment of
Dr.
glory.
Khandel.
It was a moment of glory, actually.
Awesome, Dr. Khandelwal, simply awesome. I mean, this is an example that an organization where their managerial cadre at large was not able to perform. And here an HR person diagnosed why they are not able to perform and went after it and dismantled all those restrictive forces that were there coming in the way and creating the disempowerment. And obviously it showed in the kind of work environment that got created and therefore the kind of performance. So I think something that Dr. Khandelwal said earlier in his address, that to be able to diagnose, survey, do whatever you have to do to pick up where is the critical issue that is causing underperformance in the organization and go after it. I think this example highlights it so beautifully. And thanks for sharing once again. Dr. Akhil, over to you.
So, Pramod, you're looking for instance where HR...
Anyone, yes, off and on you have shared, but if you want to add, yes.
So let me share a live one. Somewhere in mid-90s, I was in Motorola, and we were in expansion mode, very major expansion mode. And we were world leaders in chip manufacturing globally, with manufacturing plant in Penang and Texas. And we wanted to go into further, deeper into semiconductor specialization and control. And there was one particular technology, VSNI, it was that time called, on which the line managers had their eye on. We wanted to expand our expertise in that line. It was a small company, Silicon-based promoter, who had about 500 or less than 500 people in a small cubby hole in Noida Industrial Park. And they had the right skill, only this particular skill, all 500 plus had. And the line managers, this thing was, can we hire from them? And cheeky reaction from HR was, why not? We were at 75th percentile in our compensation, Ashish. And, we would make an offer which many would find it difficult to say no to. It was like a Don making an offer that you can't refuse. So cheekily we said, we'll do that. While the discussion was going on, numbers asked was about 30. We hired some 20 odd people in the first phase. Business came back that we want 30, 35 more. And one of our discussion, and I think this is the type of foolish step, if I can call it, sometimes works well. And HR must act foolish sometimes. Take a risk. So I opened my big mouth and half serious, half not joking, but half-hearted. I said, why don't we buy the whole company? Why buy in pieces? Because the ethical standard didn't allow us to take knowledge from the group of people we were hired as to what people ahead of them and after them were doing. That would be unethical. So buy the whole company. You should have seen the silence in the room. Buy the whole company. And then the discussion continued. By evening, we had actually decided to buy the whole company. Now, how much to buy? Because after about a week or 10 days, the finance came back with the asset depreciated value was almost next to zero. So the only thing we were buying was human resources with knowledge. And there's no guarantee that they would not walk out next day after buying. And what price to put for it. So these were the challenges. Now, this was a typical challenge for HR. We did not know the answer. We'll put our foot into our mouth without knowing the answer. But that is the fun part. Now to look for answer, I went to a lot of my colleagues. They're all very senior people now. And none of them had experience of buying a company for human resources. Second, we didn't want to give any incentive for them to stay because we were growing other businesses, handset business, software business. And if we give to one pocket, it would mean wrong signal to other. So run business as usual, but manage to get the knowledge out of them. One of my very bright colleague, Karthik, who later on headed Texas Instrument, we plucked him out of software business, brought him to Delhi, and blind leading blind, we sat down together to strategize. We put some strategy together. We couldn't really put the pricing together, to be honest. We had to take help from business and line management, how many millions should pay for that. But we did a back of the envelope calculation based on some rough ideas to if we are to hire and if there is a 10% attrition, replacement cost, some mila ke, this would be the, so many million would be the worth of 500 odd people. We bought the company. I put one of the best HR person, Shonali Gupta, she was heading compensation, plucked her out abruptly from compensation and put her in Noida plant for this company. And the line manager, and to repeat what Anil mentioned, the three-legged race, the line manager, a guy called Satinder, he played with us like a three-legged race. It was a pleasure to work with a guy like him. Bottom line, that we actually managed to hold attrition for first attrition happened on the 14th month. When the line managers had said that the knowledge transfer would take anything between 9 to 11 months. This was one of the maverick moment in HR. Sometimes you do something stupid and you bang your head on what made me say all these things. But when you say that type of things and when you deliver, the business people feel that you're one of us.
Sure.
The respect for the function, the respect for the individual handling it doubles. And you feel satisfied that at the end of the day, you did something for the business, not only for the function. So Ashish, there's a big thrill in opening your mouth at the wrong time and later on going and kicking yourself in the right part of anatomy to say, what the hell? But it's also a big thrill. And I think this is the thrill HR people should feel, that we can shape the business. The only question is that we have to look for opportunity rather than wait to be served on a silver plate.
Absolutely. I see Ravi's comment saying that's how intuition helps. If something appears to be promising, at least say it, let it get deliberated threadbare. And here it is. I mean, Akhil said it and everyone saw a lot of merit, and then the rest is history, as they say. Awesome. Great share, Akhil. So, Ashish, your turn.
Sure. Yeah. In fact, I'll maybe take an example of the one that which is about the context that we were discussing earlier. How can HR shape business or set the agenda and so on? So this is a very recent one in this organization itself that I am right now. Overall, there's a based on the business context that we are in or we were in 2 years back when I had arrived, there were a set of BHAGs that we put in place first, and a certain way of operating in HR, right? It's basically, we first arrived at what will be a good flywheel which will help the business context at this point of time. And therefore, what are the two uber, high level, we call them BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals that we should take at this point and rally the entire organization for it. And, on the first hand, we then arrived at the two as being a metric on employee experience, and second, a metric on talent density. Okay, quality of talent or talent density. And we said we will try to make all our efforts towards these two large BHAGs, which the company will take. And then the way of working part of it, right, within HR. So, there are two mantras or values that our organization has. Right? This is about being user first and being problem first. Now, what we mean by that is, for us, user first would imply try to ensure that we understand the user or the employee in this case through, or the candidate in this case, through either the NPS surveys. We run multiple MeBots. We do what is called a listen or die, which is about trying to listen and get the pulse of what's happening, measuring it in a certain way, right? And the second part was of the way of working was about the second value which we have, which is called problem first. Here, what we do is we try to first ensure that we have understood the problem properly, right, before jumping to the solutions. And we deliberately, made our way of working in such a way that there is a separate session that we have, which is called the PFS, where we discuss only the problem. Multiple times, ask 6 whys to ourselves to arrive at exactly why this is happening, and not discuss still in that meeting anything to do with the solution. That happens in a separate session, which we call WS. This is just to force ourselves and our way of working in order to precisely know that we are solving what is right, what the exact problem is, and not just generally doing something because it's good. Right. And it's also enabled us to be very data driven, etc. in the organization, because everybody sort of focuses on the 2 large BHAGs that I talked about, and then works using these 2 ways of working, which is user first and problem first. So the approach has allowed us to make sure that we are able to show a direct impact of what we are doing, instead of, doing something which we are not able to measure. So, yeah.
This is awesome, Ashish.
Well said.
And you do this.
Well said.
Yeah, very beautiful. So you do this not only with your team, but people in general, you're saying?
Yes, this is an organization wide. So the entire company has all business leaders, all managers, everybody has that as a measure.
Oh,
I like the idea, Pramod, of Ashish mentioning that we discuss the problem only from 5 whys. Most of the time we discuss problem briefly, look for solution, time is discussion. Here, ask 1,000 questions on problem itself, and half the problems are solved by asking those questions. Very smart idea.
Absolutely.
Very smart.
Why 5 whys, part of Toyota, as we all know, is a famous one, and they are actually have kind of incorporated in their system. No wonder something like this would impact entire organization in terms of the way they work. So a wonderful example of how HR could influence,
So see, Ashish, you did lend up teaching us.
Well, it's been 2 ways, both ways. All of us have learned, but awesome, Ashish. As you can see in response to the last question, actually, it is the kind of work that HR leader does. Akhil said it earlier. Of course, Dr. Khandelwal gave a little rejoinder, but it is essentially the kind of work that HR leader will do, of course, supported by the CEO, that will earn the kind of place you have in the organization, whether doing only HR basics or really business enabling and a transformative role. And our 3 panelists have very ably demonstrated that in the course of these conversations. Idea of this conversation was, like I said in the beginning, there are islands of excellence, and then there is a sea of mediocrity. Idea of having these conversations is that more people can take a few leads from practitioners' experience and reflections and insights, so that more and more people can move forward to the more higher level roles for HR function than what we have been doing so far. So, Dr. Khandelwal, Akhil, Ashish, thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. It's been absolutely engaging and inspiring, to get into this kind of a conversation. And also to each one of them, of course, they may not have put questions on the chat box, but their comments have been flowing. And I'm sure you can see that all of them have been very engaged audience, and that is why you have those, comments. To each one of you who joined, remained engaged, thank you so much. And please be assured that, we'll continue this series of bringing people who, can bring value, insights that moves the profession forward, and in the process benefits all of us. So thank you so much, everybody, once again. And if we don't meet till the next year starts, I want to wish you a very happy 2023. Have a great year ahead to you and your families. And thank you very much once again. Thank you.